topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Hi there. Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. Thanks for tuning in again this week. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, joining you live from Dallas, which is home base for me. If you don't know me yet, I'm a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, organizational logotherapist, inspirational speaker, social scientist, and author. I help companies discover and articulate their purpose and thread it through culture and operations. I work with organizations to develop inspirational leaders who create cultures where people actually want to come to work and do their best. And I provide programs like the Grab Your Gusto that enable individual team members to discover and unleash their passion and purpose at work to catalyze fulfillment, engagement, and productivity. You can learn more about me and how we can work together at elisecortez.com or gusto-now.com. With us today is Muni Toratini, who is an author, speaker, and facilitator on a mission to restore trust in leadership and cultivate a culture of connection. She's the author of Betraying the Noble, The Secrets and Corruption Behind the Nobel Peace Prize, and also The Mystery of the Lone Wolf Killer, which examines Norwegian mass murderer Anders Behring Breivik, both from a psychological and sociological perspective, and focuses on what we can learn from that tragedy to prevent rampage killings spurred by loneliness. She joins us today from Oslo, Norway, where it's 11 p.m. at night over there. Muni, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you so much, Elise, for having me.
Beyond thrilled to have you, Muni, and just to be connected with you and the work that you're doing in the world. And really also, let's also celebrate that you are still with us.
Yes.
You have just come back from the COVID trip. And you and your family. So we had you scheduled on the show a couple of weeks ago, and you reached out the day before and said, "Oh, Elise, I'm so sorry. I have COVID, and I don't know if I'm going to be strong enough to do the show." And so, how'd it go? How'd you navigate it?
You know, it was no fun. I'll be honest, but we all pulled through. Thank goodness. I mean, I'm so incredibly grateful that we are a family. We're all in good health, and the kids got it very lightly, thankfully. And my husband and I, we got it too, and we were in bed. You know, it was a week. It was a rough week, but thankfully we're strong. We're in good health, and we could pull through quite easily, I have to say. So, yes.
Well, very, very glad to have you back in good stead, and certainly sharing your important message with us today, which I think in many ways, this notion of here you are coming off COVID, and we're going to talk about loneliness today and relational connection. I think it's kind of an interesting thing to start to queue up on. So you and I met a few months ago and started talking about what you were addressed what you're addressing in the world, which I thought was hugely important. So I want to start by talking about the problem that you talk about of isolation and loneliness in the world. You say that more than 60% of American adults report feeling isolated, with Europe following a similar trend. So what's going on besides of course, the pandemic, which has got to be part of this? What's going on, and how can that be when we seem to have so many channels to communicate and connect?
Oh, you're so right. I mean, we do have so many channels. I mean, we've never been more connected, right? Through technology and social media than we are today. Yet, we have never been lonelier as a society. And as you said, more than 60% of American adults struggle with loneliness today. That's coming out of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, already there were experts talking about loneliness as an epidemic, epidemic proportions. And, the US was at around 40% back then. So really now it's really, and that's because of course, because of COVID, social restrictions, we haven't been able to see our family, travel, visit, be together. in the way that we used to be, right? So it's definitely a lot of that. Now in Europe, we see that the UK, beginning of 2018 already, the government appointed a loneliness minister to try to deal with the
Mhm.
problem there. So
Wow.
this is something that is huge, and politicians, governments are starting now around the world to take seriously.
Hmm. Okay, so now let's talk about some consequences of this
Mhm.
isolation. What happens when we feel this loneliness and we feel isolated?
So that's really why it's so important to have these conversations, Elise, and I thank you for bringing it up, because loneliness has some serious consequences. So first of all, it is a direct danger to our health, right? So even our physical health. So it's research shows that loneliness is more dangerous than obesity and or smoking 15 cigarettes per day, right? And we also, new research just out also shows there's a link between loneliness and depression and getting severe COVID. So that is
Mm,
something that is
mm,
extremely important right now to take into consideration and start dealing with that, because people who are people who are lonely are dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety and depression, right? Because it leads to that. So when we are in a state of hypervigilance, that's also when we get weaker. We
mhm,
are we can attract, we can get sick by all sorts of things, right? But especially a virus, because we are in a weaker state.
mhm, mhm,
So it's very important to talk about the danger to our physical and mental health, and address those issues, right? And also, loneliness has financial consequences. In the UK, the authorities have estimated that loneliness is costing employers more than 3.5 billion US dollars every year because of people on sick leave. So there are big societal costs as well, and also in terms of health, health costs, and especially here in Europe, where we have where our medical bills are paid for by our taxes, or by the state, right? So that it has a huge consequence on the whole system, and a burden on the system. So and as I write about in my first book, The Mystery of the Lone Wolf Killer.
which is, I was just going to get to that next. That's fascinating. Yes,
Yeah,
go ahead.
right. Absolutely. Loneliness can make us dangerous, not just toward other people, like I write about in my book, but also toward ourselves. Because
Hmm.
loneliness is the condition associated with suicide. And although not all lonely people have thoughts about committing suicide, it's safe to say that all suicidal people are lonely.
Hmm. Hmm. I can see that. So as you're speaking about this, and you know what's going through my mind? My God, this woman takes on small issues. Way to just take on Goliath, woman. This is amazing. And so let's now go further under the hood here. One of the things that was so compelling to me when we first got together and spoke about you coming on air, and you shared about what you've been up to. You talk about how you were compelled by the 2011 mass killing in your own backyard there in Oslo, and you made some startling discoveries about your own background personally, and
Mhm.
experiences which were very similar, eerily similar to those of the killer. Say more about that.
Absolutely. We had this most horrific, to those who don't remember, in 2011, on July 22nd, this young man, Anders Breivik, um, blew up the government center in Oslo. He built a car bomb, just like the one Timothy McVeigh used in Oklahoma City
Giving
in
goosebumps.
1995, right?
Yeah.
And then he got away. He managed to get away from that scene, and then he drove to about 45 minutes outside of Oslo, to this island where there was a summer camp for teenagers. And he started shooting, and he killed 77 people that day, most of them teenagers. and kids. The youngest, I think, was 11 years old. So this was, of course, such a shock, such it was so horrific, and to us in Norway, this was our 9/11, right? And I was living in Switzerland at the time, and I remember trying to call home, trying to call my parents. I was trying to call my friends. I'm a lawyer by training, so a lot of my friends were working in the government center, right, in the Justice Department there, and I was trying to call them, and I couldn't get through. And so as a Norwegian, of course, I was very touched by this. But what I discovered when I was following the news, and I was starting to do some digging on my own, was that the reason why I was so perhaps beyond normally touched by this, because I developed sort of in a way, an obsession and a fascination by this type of killer, this sort of lone wolf, all alone, very intelligent, a thorough planner. And why would someone like that, who's never done anything criminal in his life prior to this act, why would someone go to this extreme? Like, how can that happen? Someone who came from a good family, who was educated, intelligent, who grew up close to my home, went to the same schools, that really intrigued me. And what I found was that this young man, he felt like an outsider growing up. He never felt that he was part of the group. He never felt really accepted. He never had that sense of belonging growing up. And this followed him. And I could recognize myself in that.
Yeah.
I had struggled with my own sense of lack of belonging and loneliness for so many years as well. And up until well, the most recent years, I've struggled with that. And that really, so I could empathize with what all of these killers, because I started studying similar killers around the world, and all of them struggled with belonging and loneliness, feeling like they were part of something, right? And it was important for them to be part, and they never made it. They never could become part of a group. And now, so all of these killers then have also a lot of attachment issues from early childhood. And I don't necessarily have those. So I have been able to connect with people as an adult. But these killers, they can't. So that's why they, in the end, they suffer so much. They go to this extreme. Now, thankfully, it is rare that someone will go to this extreme, but we see it increasingly, and even now coming out of the pandemic, right? There's been a dramatic increase in mass shootings, for example, in the United States, and violence. So, and that is a side effect of this social isolation that we all have been under for almost 2 years now. And we're people. We are hardwired to connect and to be together in community. And when we are outside, when we even if we have people around us, but we feel like we are not part of, we suffer. We suffer, and it causes a lot of stress and depression and anxiety.
Oh my gosh, I can completely see how you got so riveted on all that, especially if you felt like some strong commonalities there. So,
Yeah.
with the book that you wrote, The Mystery of the Lone Wolf Killer, what do you hope that readers will get from that?
So my goal with the book was really because what happened was I was following the news, I was reading, I was doing my own research, and I couldn't find in the news during the trial of Anders Breivik, I couldn't find the answers that I was looking for. I felt that they weren't digging deep enough. They were blaming it on extremism and his political views. Whereas what I found was that it really is irrelevant. They always attach to extremism and some form, like almost like an angry fundamentalism, if you will. But it really could be anything. It doesn't really matter what the cause is, as long as they can attach to it and use it to kill in the name of the cause. But it doesn't really matter what the cause is. So to me, the cause is irrelevant. It's really what's behind. Why are they attaching to this? Why are they driven toward extremism and fundamentalism in this way? That's
What's underneath, yeah.
Right. And so what I did, so I wrote about that. I wrote also about our cultures today and why so many people struggle with loneliness. And then I also try to reveal what the warning signs are. What are the warning signs of a lone wolf killer in the making, so that hopefully we can spot him and then prevent it from happening way before, like years before, even when, like to when they are in school. And that has a lot to do with inclusivity and bullying and how we treat
Thinking the
each
same
other,
thing.
and making people feel seen, heard, and valued. That's all we want, really, all of us, right?
Right. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful way to take us into our first break, Uni. Thank you. We've been on the air with Muni Toratini, who is the author, speaker, and facilitator on a mission to restore trust in leadership and cultivate a culture of connection. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been talking about the problem of loneliness. After the break, we're going to talk about her solution, which is to increase relational energy. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. Before we get back to the program, I want to invite you to check out my book, Purpose Ignited, How Inspiring Leaders Ignite Passion in a Cause. It's on Amazon. I wrote it to awaken readers to their passion and purpose and help transform them into inspirational leaders who enliven the workplace and elevate the contribution of business to all its stakeholders. I use this content as a basis for my Vitally Inspired Leadership program and the Grab Your Gusto programs. If you're just joining the program today, my guest is Muni Toratini, who is an author, speaker, and facilitator on a mission to restore trust in leadership and cultivate a culture of connection. She's the author of Betraying the Noble, The Secrets of Corruption Behind the Nobel Peace Prize, and The Mystery of the Lone Wolf Killer. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. So we talked about the problems before this segment here, and let's dive into your solution, which is increasing relational energy, which is so beautiful and novel and different. I just had to have you on for that reason. So your journey has taught you that, as you say, that these problems of isolation and loneliness can be largely addressed by increasing this relational energy. Yep. And so first, tell us more about what you mean by relational energy. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah, that's such, I love talking about relational energy. I can talk all day about it. So I have what I call the 4 pillars of connection that are all needed for us to feel fulfilled, to feel connected, right? And relationships is one of these pillars. And that's where the relational energy comes in. And so relationships are really the foundation for communication and also for conflict resolution, right? And we see that, but what we see in the world on all levels is that organizations and even countries, they try to solve conflicts by gathering people sitting around a table, but without building relationship first. So, and research shows very clearly that there are actually basically only three things that really matters to us, to any of us, right, in any organization and in society. And the first thing is personal development, so opportunities for growth, right? And then that we have a purpose. And that's why I love this radio show, Elise. Working on purpose is so amazing that you do this. And the third is positive personal relationships. And so that doesn't mean that we have to be close friends with the people that we interact with every day. It can also be random people that we meet on the street. What matters is that they are high quality connections, meaning that they are warm, kind, and generous. And so, and also it's really interesting because Gallup has found that having friendly relationships at work, for example, is even more important to us women than it is to men. We are exceptionally relational beings, right, as women. And if we have a lot of relational energy in our work environment, then we are less likely to quit or look for a new job. And we also feel less stressed, and we have better health, and we are happier. So relational energy, coming back to your question, sorry, that was a long rant, but
it's okay. I'm with you.
Relational energy is really, it's really simple. It's the emotional energy that is created in every single social interactions that we have. And we feel this, right? Because some people, like when I'm talking to you right now, I feel energized, I feel good.
Me too.
And you bring me energy, right? I'm going to go to bed after and I'm going to feel really great about myself. I just feel it. And then sometimes we spend time with someone and we come home afterwards and we feel drained and we feel tired and we don't feel so good about ourselves. And that's the depletion of energy. So we want to increase relational energy as much as possible, right, in our lives. And just, as if you don't mind, I'd love to talk about an example that I have from my life about this.
Absolutely.
I was, this is years ago now, I was working as a lawyer for a bank in Switzerland, an investment bank, and they sent me to this conference in Moscow, huge conference, lots of people, and I didn't know anyone, and I felt kind of out of place. And the one morning, I was in the elevator going down to the lobby to breakfast, and this man comes into the elevator, and I knew of him because he was a big deal in that world back then, and he turns and he looks at me and he says, "Hi, Uni, how are you this morning? How was your dinner last night?" He remembered me from the small little introduction and small talk that we did at the big gala dinner the night before. And the fact that he remembered my name and knew who I was, I felt so good. I felt so motivated and energized, and that just not only made my day, but my whole conference, my whole experience of that conference completely changed. So that's an example of the power of relational energy. And relational energy sparks a chain of reactions. And so just to explain, this is from, I think, Dr. Wayne Baker, who is faculty director of the University of Michigan. And he says that relational energy makes us feel good. So there's an emotional aspect to it, but there's also a cognitive aspect to relational energy. It gives us clarity and it improves our memory and performance. So what that means is that when we have a lot of relational energy, we become more productive and also potentially more successful, right? So we all
makes sense. Makes sense. Okay.
So I like to call relational energy kind of like a secret weapon, right? It's really a superpower because you can do so much with it.
I totally am getting that. And I want to just, if I can, give a shout out to my Brazilian friends who taught me about relationships and connection when I lived there from 91 to 93. And years ago, they taught me about that. And part of what they taught me in that case, I know this is not part of what you're talking about, but my experience of that, what made it so different and distinguishing was they were so present when they were with me. We were together, connected. And a lot of times, usually there's also, you're touching when you talk with someone in Brazil. There's a physical piece to communicating as well, which is also just beautiful for me. But that's where I learned a lot about the importance and the brilliance and the beauty of relational energy. So I really appreciate what we're talking about, and I see just how distinguishing it is. Superpower is a great word for it. And you, of course, being you, developed these 4 pillars. So let's talk about each one of those so our listeners and viewers can get access to them. The first one, as you say, is self-worth. So talk to us about that one.
Oh, this is maybe my favorite one of all of them, because it really is the foundation for everything. So it's when someone says they're lonely, what they're really saying is that I don't believe I'm worthy of love and connection. And that just hit me. When I realized that, it just hit me so deep, because that felt like truth to me. That was, I realized that my own loneliness, my own disconnection was a lack of self-worth. I didn't believe I was worthy. So I behaved like I wasn't worthy. And so I would sometimes even exclude myself, right? Because I didn't believe I was worthy. So it's crucial to understand our own worth, to discover our worth. And I think that unworthiness is perhaps the epidemic on our planet. I mean, how we live in a world of feeling not enough, right? Like how many of us really feel that really love ourselves unconditionally. So I think that that's the first step, the very first step in connecting with other people, is to connect with ourselves first. And so what I teach people is to working on that connection with ourselves. And the first thing to work on is grounding ourselves. Being grounded and being connected are so interlinked, and especially in this world, and even before the pandemic, we are bombarded with news, with fake news, with information, with opinions. It's constant and never ending, right? And also, we've been taught to look outside of ourselves for happiness, raising for careers and money and social status. So being grounded is harder than ever. And I think that's a big part of this whole loneliness epidemic.
Okay, got it. So self-worth is the first pillar.
Yeah.
The second one, of course, is where I, of course, got to also chime in, the contribution. And I, of course, want to explore it, as we talked about together on the phone, how it's connected to purpose.
Exactly. Because one of our basic human needs is to give of ourselves. It's to contribute. It makes us feel, when we give, it makes us feel like we matter. It gives us purpose, right? So it's exactly what you're talking about. But in our society today, what we see, and what I also realize, and I have to catch myself often, is that we tend to value personal achievement higher than contribution, right? And so I have to be mindful of what I teaching my kids as well. But a way that we can contribute more, all of us can contribute more and feel like we matter. It is to own our expertise and to share what matters to us, right? And by speaking up, because we need to hear your voice. We need to. We all have something to give. We all have something to contribute. But part of contribution is also allowing ourselves to receive, and that's something that I didn't realize before, because I was so. My whole being was about achieving, right? Collecting degrees and titles and whatnot and people into my life. And I didn't realize how important it is, and I didn't feel worthy enough to receive. But receiving is contribution is really it's really two sides of it, right? So if we can't feel that we matter and it doesn't give us that pleasure if the other person isn't allowing us to give to them, right? So we also have to be open to receiving, and by doing that, we're actually giving the other person a gift. We're giving them the gift of showing them that they matter and that they are important.
Beautiful. I want to cover the last two really quick before we go to the next segment. So you have trust next. Talk about trust.
Yeah, let's talk about trust. Trust is so important. Trust is really essential to connection. Without trust, we live in a constant state of vigilance, which creates, again, a lot of anxiety and stress. Trust is really the glue that holds our society together, right? And we see that trust is low in our world today in general. We see this with all the, the riot on January 6th this year, the yellow vest movement in France, people being drawn to conspiracy theories and extremism. That is a consequence of trust and lack of trust. And trust also fuels loneliness, and loneliness fuels distrust. So it's really important that we all think about how we can increase trust by being ourselves, by taking responsibility for our acts. And we also need our leaders, right, to take responsibility for their acts and apologize and, be more clear, be more transparent. And so that's how trust is an important part of this whole equation.
Wow. Okay, there's just all kinds of things for us to go into there. But let's get relationship last. Is that the last one? Okay.
Yes. And we actually talked quite a lot about relationship, because it is really what I mean when I say relational energy. It's really cultivating relationships. But I'm happy to talk more about how to do that, how we can create more, cultivate relationship, and also create more relational energy. And so it really is about being intentional in our connections with people. What is the reason we bring people together? What is the reason beyond maybe the fact that it's a birthday party or Christmas or New Year's, right? Beyond those occasions, what is our intention, and can we also create some sort of purpose, specific purpose that is unique to that meeting? That cultivates relational energy in our relationships.
That's gorgeous. Okay. What a way to finish that segment. Thank you, my dear, for that. I'm your host. We've been on the air with Muni Toratini. She is an author, speaker, and a facilitator on a mission to restore trust in leadership and cultivate a culture of connection. We've been talking a bit about her solution, which is cultivating relational energy. After the break, we're going to hear more about how her lens and focus is manifesting in the work she's doing today. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. One other bit of news and announcement that I have to share with you is that my anthology that I've been curating for the last 2 years has just been released. It's a collection of 25 stories from women across the globe who are sharing their intimate details about finding their purpose and what they're now doing to serve from it. It's called Passionately Striving and Why, an anthology of women who persevere mightily to live their purpose. And I am so proud of it, I could bust. Wow. It's on Amazon for you. If you're just joining us, my guest is Muni Toratini, who is an author, speaker, and facilitator on a mission to restore trust in leadership and cultivate a culture of connection. She is the author of Betraying the Noble, The Secrets and Corruption Behind the Nobel Peace Prize, and also The Mystery of the Lone Wolf Killer. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. So for this last segment, Uni, I want to dive into what is so great. When you find that thing that makes you realize I have something to give the world to from this space, which is what you've done. It's amazing the creativity that can happen. So you, my dear, have been on a crazy roll and tear. So I want to first talk about you're launching this new program for high achieving women. So what's up with that? Why is that important to you? Where's it going?
Oh, my goodness. That is a result of my own struggle with self-worth, which, is linked to the loneliness and disconnection that I had for so many years, and trying to fill my life with accomplishments and overachieving and overworking and working myself to exhaustion and burnout and whatnot. And how I see this in so many women around me. And I felt the need. I knew that I could help. And so I decided to create this program because I want to help more women. I want to do this also in a group, because when women need community with other women. So that's part of it. And
So true.
So true, right? And it's amazing because I speak to women all the time how about their struggles and how they struggle to balance work and family, for example, and to have a career and to follow through on their dreams and their ambitions. And it's so hard. It's so frustrating. And they're frustrated because they feel that something has to give. And most of the time they give up on their careers. They end up, settling, doing something that maybe is less interesting to them, so that they can be there, more for their family, and they end up giving up on themselves, which I think is so sad. And I
It's
want to
criminal.
prevent, right,
Yeah,
right,
it's
and I
criminal.
want to prevent that from happening, and to because there is a different way of living. There is a different, but it starts by reconnecting with ourselves and discovering what our true worth is, right? And then owning that worth and owning our power, because women are so powerful, but we don't know it.
So very true. I work with lots of people, men and women, and when I see a woman and she starts to realize or reconnect to her power, it's the most amazing thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the other things that you told me that you were working on, which I think is just extraordinary, is you've got a project you're working on in association with the public mental health and eating disorders in Norway. Oh my gosh, what in the world is that? What is that about? What do you hope to accomplish?
Oh, that is a project. We're working on it. We will launch beginning of next year. And this is really because there is such a link between all eating disorders, including anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating, and loneliness, right? And they feed off of each
Literally,
other. And
literally,
there's a
right?
lot, right? And there's a lot of the same symptoms. So someone with an eating disorder typically feels like, they don't love themselves, they don't value themselves, they beat themselves, up, just like people who are lonely, just like all these, also these, overachieving and high achieving women do as well. And there's such a link. And the fact that the negative emotions that results from the loneliness fuels the eating disorder symptoms as well, and vice versa. So it's extremely important to understand loneliness and to deal with the loneliness in order to deal with the eating disorder.
That's so interesting. I've had
Yeah.
many friends who have had major eating disorders that I've helped them with. Not
Yeah.
that I can, I'm not, I mean, I should say, supported them while they were going through it. I don't treat that myself. But yeah, I can see the loneliness piece under that.
Mhm.
Mm,
Exactly. So that's what we're going to do in collaboration, where I come in and talk about the loneliness, and so there will be sort of we'll workshop this. This will be a program that will go over a year to start with, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But I think it's so interesting, and so I'm so happy that the Norwegian government and state is beginning to take loneliness seriously, also mental illness. I think we haven't even seen anything yet of what this pandemic is going to
the
do to
fallout,
our
yeah.
mental health, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And although
Yeah.
it was necessary, I'm not saying that all the precautions, all the measures were not necessary, but it will have an effect on how we function in society.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, talk about, in terms of this project that you're up to, Uni, talk about contribution, making an impact,
Mhm.
making a difference, giving your gift. So one of the things that I know, being a local therapist, is that when we give of ourselves, when we serve other people,
Yeah.
then we get into self-transcendence. That
Mhm.
is the space that gives us the feeling of fulfillment that
Yeah.
you're talking about. So talk about, contribution on your part to be part of this. And I can't even imagine the amazing people that you're working with on this project.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Out of this world, and I feel so grateful and so privileged to be able to do this and be able to hopefully help so many people, and hopefully also we can take this abroad. Take this outside of Norway, and experiment with dealing with different aspects of our mental health.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In connection.
Okay, awesome. That is so amazing. Talk about being up to something, my dear. And then, wait, there's more. You told me that you're also launching this new class called "Why Balancing Work and Family is So Dang Hard and What to Do Instead." So, what are you
Oh,
doing with
yes.
that? And
Yes.
when is that coming out?
So actually, that is, I had a class, that's actually a free master class that I'm doing. Just, because I want to help as many people as I can. So there is a class actually that will be on Tuesday next week. That will be my last class in this series, for now anyway. And for any listeners who would like to join that class, feel free. You can go to my website and sign up for it, or any of my social media. I am the only person in the world with my name. I have a very weird name,
Amazing.
unusual name. So you can find it and sign up, and it will be next Tuesday. So that is really where I'm taking 5 of the most frequent frustrations, challenges, and burning questions that I hear from women from
Mm,
all over the world about balance and trying to balance work and family, and feeling so frustrated. And then what I will do, I will take those 5 challenges, frustrations, and I will deal with them one by one and teach on what we can do instead,
mm,
what we can do instead, so we don't have to try to balance, right? Because balancing, if you think about it, your work needs you 100%. Your
mhm,
family needs you 100%. How do you balance that? I
mhm.
I haven't found any way to balance that. So
Yeah.
there's something else that we can do instead. And that has to do with owning our self-worth, knowing what we are worth, and setting boundaries, and a lot of the same things actually that we deal with loneliness. It's just a different aspect of it, and a little different methods, but
Hmm. Okay, ooh, we gotta treat this. So what you're
yes.
talking about is so important about this.
Mhm.
Why balancing work and family is so dang hard and what to do instead. So here
Yeah.
is what I've been saying and coming to is that the pandemic in many ways has really ushered in what I would call a workforce strike. The
Yep.
workforce has said, not going to tolerate this stuff anymore. I'm not going to go work for low wages and get exposed to COVID. I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to
Yep.
quit my job and I'm going to go. Or I'm not going to work, overwhelming crazy hours anymore. I'm just going to quit my job and go.
Hmm.
So now, if we take this notion of this family piece, as far as if I have this right, I'm pretty sure only women can bring children into the world, at
Hmm.
least currently. So But, if there's, it needs to be done, right? So we've got to find
Yeah.
a way to be able to make this more um, available for women to be able to have a career, but also still be able to have a family. And so just
Yes.
today, I'm having a conversation with a woman that I'm working with, that I'm doing some coaching with, and she's pushing back on her boss and employer because they're saying, "Hey, you want to navigate your career. If you're going to navigate your career, you have to travel. You've got to be on the road." And she has a very young child, and she wants to have another child. And she
Mm.
said, "No." They said you should get a nanny. You should go ahead and get help in your house. Get your mom to come over and help you. And she's like, no, I don't want to do it on those terms. I don't
Mm.
want to be I do not want to be a parent on those terms. I do not want to outsource my parenthood to these other parties while
Yeah.
I'm on the road for you. I will
Mm.
travel some for you, but this is not going to be the big 2 and 3 week trip thing. So I think there's a real opportunity for more women,
Yeah.
to be able to push back on this stuff that's said that is required of them in order to develop their careers because they
Yeah.
want to actually be available for their children.
Hmm.
I chose to work for myself starting in 2003 when I had my child so that I would have more control over my life and my schedule.
Yeah.
So I think what you're doing is so, so critical. In
Yeah.
fact, is a necessary movement in the world right now. More women are dropping out of
Absolutely.
the workforce because they get to the place where they say, I just call uncle. I quit.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's important that people continue with their work and have careers and live their purpose, right? And also for their own sanity, first of all, and also for their financial independence and freedom.
Absolutely right.
It's part of our movement, right? To be free, independent, equal uh, humans, right? So it is part, and I think there's something for working smarter, and
Yeah.
also there is something to be said for setting an example, also being role models for the younger generations, for younger women all over the world, and setting boundaries, and being owning, what is ours to take on and what is not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And showing our children that we no longer sacrifice ourselves for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
We put ourselves first. That
Mm-hmm.
priority list needs to be turned around, because usually women, we tend to be the nurturers, we tend to be the caretakers, and we are the last person on our priority list, and that
Yeah.
needs to change. It needs
That's
to be We need to be first, because we're
can't put.
not serving our children or anyone by being last and sacrificing ourselves, and showing that exhaustion and sacrifice is what we show,
Right.
rather
And put your
than.
oxygen mask on first, right? And put our
Yeah.
own mask on first.
Yep.
And then we can care for somebody else.
Yep.
So, Uni, we've managed already to come to the end of the show. It's amazing how fast it
Oh,
goes.
that was so fast.
Right? So, the show is listened to by people all over the world. And the whole idea is to be able to help create a workplace where people actually want to come to work and thrive, do their best. And
Yeah.
we do business that betters the world. What would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Oh, there's so many things, but I'm gonna keep it simple. So it's all about relational energy. It's about listening more, asking questions, really listening also to the nonverbal communication going on,
Mm-hmm.
showing that you care. And I love the example of remembering someone's name, even if there's a colleague that you don't know very well, but ask them, what's your name, like, what do you like, know something about them, and there's something in their personal life that you can pick up on and ask them and make them feel seen, heard, and valued. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is the most important thing that we can do for our work environment.
Wonderful, Uni. So great to have you and and to be connected to you. So thank you for being on the
My
show,
pleasure.
sharing your heart, your soul, your message. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Elise. It's been a pleasure.
You're so welcome. Listeners and viewers, if you want to learn more about Muni Toratini, her work, courses, or books, you can visit her website. It's Muni Toratini. Let me spell that for you. It's UNNITURRETTINE.com, unitoratini.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on the air with Dalton Divakaran and Steffi Sunny Divakaran, founders of Ethne, a nonprofit organization empowering vulnerable women and children across the world. We enjoyed a most inspiring conversation about how the organization and its purpose were born and the amazing work they are doing to lift lives across the planet. 2 young people with also 2 full-time jobs on the side as well, by the way. Next week, we'll be on the air with Simon Mainwaring, talking about his latest book, Lead with We, the business revolution that will save our future. I promise it will be extremely interesting, educational, and inspiring. See you there. And remember that work is at least a third of our life, so let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.